are right at 3 o'clock. So to honor the folks that are here on time, more people usually pop in as we go. So I'll just admit them and we'll just keep rolling. Just logistically. So welcome everyone to Book Chat. I'm thrilled that we're here today with the amazing Lauren Kingsland, one of my most dear friends and inspiring artists. She's going to talk to us about one particular book, but she's actually the author of many. So I'm going to use that as a teaser. But first, I just wanted to introduce myself and why we're doing this. So hang on for a minute while we get more people coming in. And I'll tell you that one of the things that keeps me going with Assisting Hands Home Care, because we do so much service for families, is the family that I was brought up into. And this is a fun photograph of my parents at their wedding. My mom wasn't wearing white because it was depression, and she bought a green suit. And she was really quite tickled to be marrying my dad, who looks like a baby there. And he had finished his time in the service, and this was the worst snowstorm in the history of Trenton, New Jersey. And they waited and waited and waited for family to come in on the train. So I just love that picture. It reminds me of so many things. But it really does make a difference to have support at home. My dad had a stroke and my mom needed support, and we found a fantastic caregiver through an agency at the time. And she has still stayed a friend of my mom. She always checks in a couple times a year, wants to make sure she's doing okay. So we're here for your families. If you have friends, neighbors, clients, colleagues who need information and education, we really pride ourselves in offering that to our families. And then, of course, if they need healthcare, home care, we can help with that as well. So now I'm going to introduce Lauren Kingsland. I love this quote. This is on her website, and it says, "Quilt making is like a life well lived. The beauty comes from the creative use of the materials at hand and embracing the unexpected results." So Lauren, welcome.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you for the invitation. I'm so happy to be here.
And let's talk a little bit about sort of the nuts and bolts. Where are you from? What got you into quilting?
I grew up on the North Shore of Chicago until I was 10, and then my family moved to Colorado Springs. And then I lived there for a number of years and moved to Columbia, Missouri to go to college. So in all of those places, there are local traditions of doing quilt making. As a young child, I assisted my Indiana grandmother with making comforters, and I was put to work threading the needles. So I got a lot of experience doing that because I had young eyes and little fingers. And I had a chance to see a lot of the historical needlework in Colorado. And then when I moved to Missouri, I became involved with the Quilters Guild as a social opportunity to begin with, and met wonderful, wonderful people there, became acquainted with the depth of compassion within the quilting community for one another. It is a traditional domestic craft. It is an art medium, but it also has a layer of community and caring for one another behind the medium in a way that maybe many other media don't. I don't know if painters getting together and bringing each other casseroles and babysitting for each other. Maybe they do. I don't know, but
we'll have to find out. But tell me this.
Yes.
Because I'm a painter by nature. When I look at your quilts, I see such a painterly quality, but there's also a lot of math in that making of the quilt so that it doesn't look like my quilts would look. You know just how to do that. So how did you get to that point? What was it that came together for you between math and art?
One of my very favorite classes in high school was geometry. because it all really made sense. You can prove triangles congruent. Doesn't matter how big they are, how small they are. The description of geometry just makes sense to how my brain works. So that drew me to quilt making. I do have so for the ordinary person, I have a fairly extensive mathematical background. I studied up through differential equations and hit my wall there, but that's pretty far. And I like the applied mathematics part of quilt making. I like the engineering of quilt making. But Patricia, what I also love about being a quilting teacher is that it is a very big tent, and the student who does not do math readily can also create beautiful, beautiful quilts. In your slide, you see the cover of Healing Journey, and that's a striped background. There are no straight lines there. That's an applique, a piece put on top of the heart-shaped path. No math required for doing that. So there's a place in the medium for people with mathematical backgrounds, and there is plenty of room for someone who doesn't care about a straight line.
So, well, I thought we'd talk about your book. So this wasn't your first book. But it's also a very deep subject, dealing with working with families and patients who are in the process of complications due to cancer. And so tell us a little bit on the background, and then let's dive into some of these images, because I really want to focus on images too.
Okay. I've spent about 20 years working with the Arts and Humanities program at Georgetown Lombardi Cancer Center. And our goal is to encourage a creative response to illness. So all of the work I've done with patients and with family members and with staff has been kind of the handwork has been the excuse to sit together, have the enjoyment of making something. And when you are sitting face to face with somebody doing something, there's a lot of natural conversation that happens. So I have heard 20 years worth of stories from patients and families and staff, stories of triumph, stories of fear, stories of, I don't know what's going on, and stories of resilience, amazing stories. I wanted to put those stories into a series, and yet I respect the privacy of each individual patient, and each individual is special. And having said that, this is a both and thing. Each individual is special, and there are, maybe you can call them meta stories, big stories that show up over and over and over. So I chose to make more abstract type quilts that were about those big themes that I've heard again and again.
That's great. Cool. So let's go through a few of them. We've got the cover down here on the right.
Okay.
Y'all see that?
So that's
tiny cursor
that's called Heart's Journey. What I have observed is that people who are dancing with cancer almost always have a companion, someone in their family, a loved one, a neighbor, somebody who brings them to their appointments, somebody who kind of sees over their care. And so the spiral path is the journey that they're going through, and the spiral, having the spiral shaped like a heart, was my way of saying this is a loving journey that they don't have to go by themselves. Now, in this piece, perhaps, I don't know if you can see it in this smaller detail, but there are kind of blue stripes in there and little red flecks in those blue stripes. When you see the quilt, the quilt is about the size of this one behind me. Those are little tiny crabs because we live in Maryland, it's easy to buy fabric that has crabs
there they
on
are.
it.
They're right like here and here and
Right,
here and here.
right.
That's great.
And I deliberately included a crab fabric because the word that we use for cancer, cells run amok, is karkinos, which is from the Greek crab who runs around on the beach. And Hippocrates was the first person to use karkinos to document the presence of skin tumors, cancerous skin tumors that had little veins, little blood supply to the tumor that was visible on the surface of the skin. So that looked like karkinos to him. So it just seemed like a little, all play on words.
Yeah, amazing. Let's talk about this beautiful piece with the water pouring.
Water is the element that is most present in us, in our bodies. And I know whenever I'm near a body of natural water, I can feel my blood pressure go down. I can feel myself relax. There are traditions throughout the world of going to take the waters at a particular place, water with particular dissolved minerals being therapeutic or whatever. This is just a nod to the natural process of the natural healing capacity of the simple thing we take for granted every day, water.
So each one of these is precious, and I don't mean to go too short on them, but since we have limited time, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Okay.
And I'd like to talk about these pieces. Now, there are several that have this design. Tell us about this design and how you got started making that.
All right. This design.
While you talk, I'm going to show the different ones.
Okay. This design is part of my Kolim series. Kolam is the spelling of the name. It is a design tradition from southeastern India, from the state of Tamil Nadu. It's a women's drawing practice that's done on the ground at the doorway each morning as an invocation of blessing, as a painted prayer, it's a contemplative practice. When I was in India, I saw these all over the place, and I was so excited by them because the symmetry and the geometry of them remind me a lot of our tradition of pieced quilt blocks. So it's about geometric beauty as part of daily life. Turns out, leave this one up, will you? The one I'd like to, that one. If you leave that one up, you can really see the dots in there. When you draw this, you need to put down a grid of reference points in the ground and then draw the complicated designs around it. All the dots have to be encircled, nothing left out, no loose ends. And that's a good way to model the day. So each dot can represent a concern for the day or something you're grateful for, a person who you want to remember at the beginning of that day. So it can be a mindfulness practice to name what is true for you today. And then you draw a beautiful design around it, like you will go through your day with all these people and challenges and gratitudes on your mind. And you come back at the end of the day to where you started. So
let's talk a little bit about who this book is for. Who would you want to give this to?
This book is for people who like quilts. It's for people who like different kinds of fiber art. Each image, however, is on the right-hand page, and it's got a companion page of my description of why I made the quilt and some supportive,
Oh, good.
Some positive inspirational material on the facing page. So if you go to the first one, the one that has the little alligators in it, that one, yes. This is the beginning of the show. And I wanted to say something about fear. The first place this exhibit was installed was actually in the Cancer Center. I did not want to put a piece with fangs dripping blood or anything really scary into that place. So my challenge was, how do I honestly address the issue of fear, which is a beginning stage of a cancer diagnosis? So I put alligators in there, and I used the image of the compass rose, those old maps that say there be monsters here in the old maps. And so the 4 cardinal points and the secondary points, which are the tails and the heads of the alligators in this, make up the shape that is a wayfinding shape. So on the facing page, it says, you're scared, you have to go, you don't know where you're going, and there is guidance. Somebody has been there before. There is wayfinding available to you. The monsters will not get you.
That's beautiful. What a sweet way to put it. And of course, at Lombardi, you're not just working with adults, you're working with children as well, or is it mostly
I do not work with the children. No, I work
Okay.
I work primarily with
remember.
adults. They have an amazing children's art therapy program there, Tracy's Kids. So they are independent. I mean, if a child walks in, we will of course talk to them and play with
There
them.
may have been
But
family with
there are
loved ones,
families
right.
with children who have, but primarily our focus is with adults of all ages.
No, this is beautiful. This is an amazing little book. So I've given this book to many, many friends of mine and colleagues who are going through a traumatic time in their life. And it doesn't have to be about cancer, which this one
Right.
is presence of cancer, but any life-threatening PTSD kind of thing going on. There's some just beautiful story within the book. And so I recommend it from that perspective as well. It's just a
Thank you,
great
Patricia.
gift.
Thank you. I have heard from readers that who, or people who have given the book, I've gotten very positive response that it has made a difference. So
Yeah. So what I'd love to do is, are there any questions about this particular book? Okay. So I'm gonna see.
oh, I can tell you where it's how to get it.
Well, that's what I was just gonna try to get your website to show me that. Here it goes.
You can order it on Amazon. You can just order it on Amazon.
So what I wanted to point out is that when you go to Lauren's website, which is beautifully designed, her aesthetic is high in all that she does. You can see her scrapbook t-shirt quilt book, which is very popular.
I just saw on the website that you can order a quilt. That was my next question.
Yes, you can order.
So that's what I wanted. Perfect segue, Andy. I wanted
Thank
to
you,
have
Andy.
time to talk about what
It's
you
all
do in the
beautiful
studio.
work. I really like it.
Thank you. Thank you. I do a lot of commission work for individuals because there's often the projects that people have me commission incorporate garments that are important to them, either their own garments that have shrunk in the closet, which seems to happen quite a lot, particularly lately, or garments that belong to a beloved person who has passed away. It's a really marvelous, transformative project to take clothing and make it into a quilt to mark the transformation of a relationship if the person is not with one anymore. So each client gets an individually designed, individually crafted quilt.
And so how long does that process take? How does it work from the client perspective? They call you up and say, hey, Lauren, I'd love to have a quilt made from some fabrics I've been collecting over the years. And you say,
I say, we'll look at our calendars. You can bring your fabric over to the studio. I live in Washington Grove. I have a studio in one wing of my house here in Washington Grove. And bring the materials over. We'll talk about where you want to use this, what's your goal, if you want something to hang on the wall, if you want something for the bed, and pick out colors that you like to go with it, kind of do a general plan, and then leave me a deposit and I will work and get it back to you. Typically, I tell people about 6 weeks from the time that I actually start their project, because I do keep a studio schedule. So if the day you happen to come doesn't necessarily mean that day you get to be first in line, but you get to be in line. So,
and Lauren, what, you also would accept the fabric shipped to you if they can't make it to Washington Grove, if they're from someplace far, far
Yes,
away?
I would. And Zoom has really made this a much easier process. I've done several projects for people in the last year who could not come to see me, whether it's because of distance or because we were all in quarantine and nobody was going anywhere.
Right.
So ship me the fabrics. We can set up a Zoom meeting. We'll hold things up and we'll talk about it and get it all planned.
That's
So we
great.
can-
So Andy, do you have a quilt in mind?
Well, no, not at the moment.
Oh, okay.
You know, because I was wondering, the quilts don't always have to be for people with cancer, do they?
Oh,
Oh,
no. In fact, the reason this book is about the presence of cancer is because of my work at Lombardi.
Uh-huh.
But, on any given day, Andy, everybody has 5 symptoms. I mean, really. And the difference between the person who is the patient and the person who is not the patient is just a coincidence on any day. We will all have some kind of something to deal with at some point. We are all patients. Sometimes we're all caregivers. Sometimes, we're all.
But Lauren, I think what Andrew's saying is, like, I commissioned Lauren to make a baby quilt.
Yes. And
Nothing
it was
wrong
so
with the
fun to
baby.
get to.
So,
Yes.
and somebody else has a kid who's graduating from college and
Right.
took all the t-shirts and made a t-shirt quilt for them. So
Right.
they're about, life cycle events
Life,
or just,
yeah.
I love the color purple and I want to see lots of purple in a quilt because I'm changing the paint on my wall to my bedroom or whatever it is. So yes, it's not just about
Cancer.
healing quilts, but
no.
quilts are instinctively or intrinsically healing. When you wrap yourself in a Snuggie quilt, you just feel better.
Yes, you do. And if that quilt has memories of people that you love or places you've been, I've done road trip quilts. People went on a trip, brought me all their quilts, their shirts.
A memory quilt is like a great idea because my brother passed away a couple years ago from cancer, and my oldest brother, and he was just like an insane golfer. He loved playing golf until he couldn't anymore. And I was just thinking, wouldn't that be neat to have a quilt in honor of his memory, to send my niece because he loved golf so much. And,
that sounds
and things like
perfect.
that, and you throw in geometry into the mix, let me tell you. I mean,
That's Andrew, that is exactly the kind of quilt Lauren loves to make, is when it's personal connections like that.
Right, personal connections. I try hard to listen to the story that you're trying to tell. I think of myself as an interpreter of a story that's being told in fabric. And so you have the bones of the story, and it's my job to make that into a real thing.
So I put Lauren's,
sorry.
that's okay. I was going to say, I put Lauren's contact information on the screen. So feel free to capture that.
Right.
I can also put it in chat if that would be.
Okay, Patricia, there's also another timely note to put up. Right at this moment, there is an exhibit of my work on up at the McLean Textile Gallery, which is in the Chainbridge Road in Old Dominion in McLean. It's a fairly new gallery, so it's dedicated to the work of textiles. I think I'm the 3rd exhibit, and they're very excited. Beautiful space. And that will be there through the 16th of July.
Well, I have another question, if I may.
Sure.
Do you also visit, like every year down on the mall, they have the Folklife Festival.
Mm-hmm.
Have you gone down there and displayed some of your work?
I have not displayed my work there. That there are so many wonderful artists in the world, and
But she teaches for the Smithsonian.
But I do teach for the Smithsonian.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I teach for Smithsonian Studio Arts. So I have a class that starts in July, 4-week class on beginning hand quilt making. I have a class coming up on mindful stitching, which is designs and techniques to use hand stitching as a mindfulness tool. So it's really more about process than product, although you get a nice product. But anyway, those are available at Smithsonian Associate Studio Arts. and you can look up my name.
Yeah, you're fascinating work. It's really
Thank
good.
you.
Really pretty.
Thank you.
Lauren,
Yes,
Lauren,
Martha.
do you do all handwork or do you do machine work too?
I do both hand and machine work, depending on how the piece is going to be used and how complicated it is, and my time, what I'm doing. I try to have a handwork project if I know I'm going to be sitting for a long time, if I'm traveling, or if I'm sitting with my mom, who sometimes just needs company, and so I can be stitching away while I'm visiting with her. But I do clients' pieces by machine, just for reasons of economy. You do not need to pay for my time hand stitching. I can.
It's right. I understand.
Right.
It's just beautiful when it's hand done.
It's beautiful when it's hand done.
It's beautiful when it's machine done too, but it's just
Right.
beautiful when it's hand done.
It is beautiful when it's
Yeah.
hand done. Right.
Mhm.
So, thank you
that's
for that question, though.
And that's a great question. And I'm sure, if there was a reason for Lauren to do a hand stitched piece, she would price it out accordingly. And
And
I was just
Yeah.
curious because a long time ago I took some quilt making classes
Mhm.
and it was I've made a couple of quilts,
Nice.
nothing, but they're all machine stitched and then they're tacked because I never really learned how to do either the hand or the machine.
The quilting stitch. Yes.
Yeah. I
Well,
never
put that on
really
your bucket
did
list,
it.
Marcia. You can do that. You can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
If you can,
Yeah.
if you can go in and out and in and out and in and out, you can.
Mhm.
You can.
I
do
can.
that. You can do that.
I know. Yeah.
well, I want to thank you all for joining me. I want to thank Lauren for being a great guest with some very insightful thoughts about how quilt making helps patients and their families muddle through what is often a most difficult time, and how making art is a healing modality that we need to make more use of.
It is.
So with that in mind, I want to make sure that you know that our Friday, we're still doing 4 Zoom programs, educational programs each month. And Friday the 9th, we'll have Kay Lowry, who has a business called Sweet Life Wellness. And she helps people stay healthy through what they put in their mouths. And on July 12th, we've got, I'm going to be doing a little creativity with self-care. We have a yoga program that we're floating back and forth. So we'll see how that goes. And then Tuesday, the 20th, of course, I run Death Cafe with the beloved Pump House Park Village, my neighborhood. And we've been getting folks from all over the world now because we do it on Zoom. It's been fantastic. The resources are incredible to talk about death and dying. And then our next book chat will be with Diana Tokaji, who had a really horrific experience being falsely arrested. And she wrote a book about it called 6 Women in the South. And it should be a very dynamic conversation. She used yoga to actually come back from that PTSD experience. And she's quite an amazing poet, published poet and author, and was just the wrong person at the wrong time. Crazy, crazy. So thank you all so much. And thank you, Lauren. And I hope
Patricia.
we'll run into each other at the show in McLean Textile Gallery.
Thank
Sounds
you.
great.
Thank you. Bye.
Right.
Thanks a
Bye,
lot.
everybody. Thank you.
It's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing it.
Oh, thank you, Marcia. That's very kind.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.